so the simulation could well be improved. In its conditions, the deterioration of the very simulator is due to the overall effect of restricting controlling ideas agreed with. Then again, the purpose of the simulator is to recognize the real universes, and not to make a delightful, cozy spot in a created echo of the true reality. For this is what we have done for millions of lifetimes, and as things stand, it's becoming increasingly difficult to find a safe place in the creational simulator. Not that it ever was safe, as we agree to the potential always of being eliminated through our agreement to the power others have over us. Destroying what is the training ground is rather nonsensical, however, and if it is at all possible to improve circumstances within it, without that objective being the primary focus, then it again makes sense. For what happens in creation must not claim our attention and focus. It's rather easy to become embroiled in situations that seem noble, saving the world, etc., and although far better than wanting to destroy it, especially from a cause and effect personal karma perspective, this notion can have us fall to the ideas, be the effect of them, that world-saving, or anything in creation for that matter, represents. Everything in creation is a created idea, and agreement to any idea will culminate in the effect that must be experienced. An inadvertent agreement to ideas that are beneficial from a sharing of the is perspective, or unavoidable on our process of awareness, are not to be concerned about. But it's very easy to fall to any of the ideas of a dualistic nature, to take the stance of good or evil. This is one of the overlooked trappings of the matrix, that in fact any idea, regardless of its nature, good or bad, if agreed with, will have us the effect of, and destined to remain then in the simulator. It's all about awareness, and anything we become convinced about, regardless of what it is, will have us decide a limited personal self-consideration that will ensure we remain in the simulator until we decide differently. We recognize that everything we consider about ourselves, from identity to personality to self-decided positions or noble stances, are considerations of the mind, of the personal created self. We become aware of the difference that is our personal selves, in comparison then with our real selves. The real self is a state of being isness, like the sun shining. It considers nothing beyond the state of being that which it is. It just is. From the perspective, the view of the real self, it would view creation and everything occurring within it with a detached indifference and objectivity. For indeed, creation and the created self is not what it is, and so naturally it would regard both with objectivity. It is something beyond or outside of itself. It's not a subjective situation. If we endeavour to adopt this same objectivity with the experiences we have, we learn better to perceive as the real self does, perceive as the guides do. We learn to see how the is sees. Anything other than a state of being must be activated aspects of the personal self, and we can have a very demonstrable comparison as we switch our views from thinking and feeling to being in this being-isness state. We are fluctuating then between the personal created self and the real self in creation. A real self that would not create ideas and considerations in response to an experience, that wouldn't see an idea that represented evil and take the opposing idea, that of good. The real self wouldn't be caught in this dualistic nature of the simulation. It would remain in a state of objective indifference, and thus walk through the illusions of consciousness, and not be bound by them. Interestingly, when we do share with individuals, we must be able to enter their experience, or what we are sharing couldn't feature in it. This again, as everything, is determined by agreement. Nothing can feature in a person's experience unless agreed with or decided upon. Overall, human consciousness is wanting more, to be and see more than it has restricted itself to for thousands of lifetimes. This collective want is in essence agreement that allows the possibility of being more to feature in the human experience, an agreement that allows the presence of the new presentation, Dwayne and the sharings of the real guides. Even though every individual has a real self, and the real intent is to reconnect with and recognize this real state of being, individuals by and large are unconscious and have long forgotten this, and generally are very much locked into a personal created self they believe is who they are. The inherent want to be more is still present, if only subconsciously, and as the overall effect of restriction and control compounds and becomes more prevalent and invasive, as overall life in the simulator becomes harder, this inherent want becomes more apparent. Most individuals have great unease that things are not as they are marketed to be, as the ramping up of restriction, control, and diminishing living conditions become impossible to ignore. A controlled situation reaching such an extreme serves as a great potential wake-up for all individuals caught in this controlled matrix, and the wake-up and want to be more expresses itself as an overall effect, where the is can feature in this particular simulation and have the representatives on hand to present it. Although much will be done to convolute this potential mass wake-up, particularly to offset the opportunity to become more aware, the controllers are less concerned about people waking up to the knowledge of the control system and its many facets than they are of learning how to extricate themselves from their controlled matrix, as knowledge alone will not allow an individual to escape from the simulator. They will still be, as they always have been, tap-lined, controlled through agreement unconsciously and subliminally, except they will have knowledge of perhaps the reptilians, the vaccinations, the cull of the human population agenda, etc., and in fact they are then likely to emotionally react even more to such information, which further compounds the tap lines that bind them for further unconscious lifetimes. They will possibly take a stand also against the tyranny and fall into the effect that agreement to these dualistic ideas of good and evil will result in. As the world is very heavily monitored and surveilled, the controllers will also know of those who are waking up to this knowledge, and even though the knowledge won't save them from the simulator, they may still be eliminated by the dark forces. The masses will be in agreement to the systems of control they may oppose. They will agree to the ideas of control, and control that individuals whose ideas these are have over them, resulting in the potentiality of being eliminated, an agreement to this possibility, through agreement to the power these individuals present themselves as having over them, a controlled experience of restriction that can only be if agreed with, and so to oppose something that was created, maintained, and perpetuated through agreement, despite the deceptive means agreement was garnered, is nonsensical. Walking around creation is the real solution. Dealing with what we have had a hand in creating through agreement, but not maintaining agreement to it, deciding a new position with our real awareness. For the unaware, many will express their wake-up by opposing a system they helped to build, and this will be their focus, a personal focus naturally, as the real self seeks only to recognize itself and simply be. Beneath all these personal self-considerations and emotional reactions to the knowledge of an increasingly apparent control grid will be everyone's actual, real intent to recognize the true reality. The majority will then not recognize the solution, that is, the opportunity of real awareness as it is presented to them, and will dismiss and discard it just as readily. Although the presentation of the is can only feature in this simulator through agreement, and the opportunity to directly feature in an individual's lives requires far more refined and specific agreement on behalf of each individual. The real guides will approach individuals primarily on the real side, for the real self of the individual decides when it is time to begin the process to recognize itself. But it's the personal created self that it is encased in that must take the initial step. The real guides first deal with the real self on the real side, and then it must filter through to the personal self on the physical life level. Opportunity will then avail itself an experience where the is makes itself known in the personal lives of the individual whose real self has decided to begin this process. An overheard conversation, a chance meeting, happening upon a YouTube video regarding the new presentation, bumping into one of the new friends, etc. The opportunity will be there. It may be subtle or apparent. It might require a degree of recognition that can easily be overlooked by the individual. The opportunity might be realized, grasped, embraced, then at some stage abandoned. It is all dependent upon the personal self. At a certain point on the journey and process of awareness, connection to the real self is stronger, and greater awareness becomes so, that turning back and returning to the personal self and created life becomes more and more unlikely. Yet there are still instances and examples where people practically at the gates of the real universes have walked away.